Evening, everybody. Welcome to the Lincoln County Courthouse. This is a joint meeting with the Lincoln County and the City of Sioux Falls Planning Commission. I'll start with a few introductory remarks. This meeting is being streamed live, and when adjourned, it will be posted and available at lincolncountysd.gov. The order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, which we have one, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff report. The applicant will then be asked to explain the proposal in further detail and answer any questions from the Planning Commission and the City Planning Commission. I will then open the floor to public comment, first in persons in support of the application and then persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak clearly into the microphone. Please limit your conversations to less than 5 minutes. Thanks for your cooperation. All right, the County Planning Commission and the City Planning Commission will do a roll call. For the county side, please state your name for the record.
Todd Boots. Here.
Marlene Sweeter, here.
Oh, we have Colin on being called in.
Yeah, Colin instead.
Thank you, Colin. And Jerry Jungling, City of Sioux Falls.
On the city side, we'll do a roll call. Mulally,
Here.
Fisher,
Here.
Gray,
Here.
Norman's here. We got a quorum on the city side.
Thank you very much. All right, now we'll ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from September 11th was the last time we met. On the county side, do we have a motion and a second?
Motion by Boots.
Second by Sweeter.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will now take a voice call. Commissioner Boots?
Aye.
Commissioner Enstead?
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeter?
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. City of Sioux Falls?
On the city side, I look for a motion to approve the minutes from September.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor signify by yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Approved on the city side.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. All right, for there, we have a quorum, meeting minutes. All right, I will ask for the meeting agenda tonight. Mr. Brown, are there any changes to the meeting agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Lincoln County, I will ask for a motion from the commission.
Motion
I'll
to
make a
approve,
motion to
Sweeter.
approve.
Second, Boots.
All right, I'll do a voice call. Commissioner Boots,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeter,
Yes.
Commissioner Enstead,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jungling is a yes. City of Sioux Falls?
On the city side, I look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Passes on the city side.
Thank you. All right, next is my favorite part where we get public input on non-agenda items. So I'll ask for anybody who talk about anything not on the agenda, step forward and we'll hear from you. Seeing none, I'm going to close the floor. All right, our next item is conditional use permit, public hearing. Conditional use permit 0002-2025. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Toby Brown, representing County Planning. This public hearing before you this evening is a conditional use permit for a kennel. The kennel is located at Track 3 of Axel's Tracks, north half of the southeast quarter, Section 23, Township 100 North, Range 50. This is in Springdale Township. Subject property is a little over 200 feet to the east of the corporate limits of the City of Sioux Falls. This is just off of Cliff Avenue. Subject property is zoned A1 agricultural, as is all the surrounding properties. This particular parcel is a little over 3 acres in size. Subject property is developed. It does have a single-family dwelling and an outbuilding on it. The outbuilding you can see to the pictures to the south of the property. The outbuilding is approximately 1,800 square feet in size. These are some pictures that staff took of the property. Looking at the property, the one that would be looking to the west would be looking directly onto the property there. So the applicant did submit application materials to county staff, identified that would intend to utilize the existing 1,800 square foot accessory building on the property to convert that for kennel space. Specifically, approximately 20 dogs is what's being proposed, but I'll let the applicant talk a little bit more about the details, the hours of operation, those different types of things. As part of the staff analysis, you're aware is that a conditional use permit under the joint zoning ordinance does have criteria associated with it. So staff went through the analysis of that criteria to really identify if the proposed use would be appropriate for this particular property. Through that review and through that analysis, staff really identified some concerns regarding the proposed operation with that criteria, specifically being the increased traffic, the potential with this type of a use, as well as some concerns with noise mitigation. As you're aware is that we have had a number of kennels proposed. One of the concerns is of adjacent properties would be the noise mitigation. And so staff has had some really good discussions with the applicant, but at the time of the application materials, that just wasn't associated with what we were reviewing at the time. Also a concern with potential visual screening. As you can see on this property, the existing building is really adjacent to that south property line. There is quite a few other properties, what I'll call residential properties, within that surrounding area. And so really through that analysis, we really looked at the criteria and just didn't feel that the particular use would be appropriate for the surrounding area based on the criteria that is established. So staff is recommending denial of this application. And then I would say in addition to that, the city of Sioux Falls, which staff did supply the memo that was supplied to county staff. City staff has concerns with what I would really call the future compatibility of the land use with their future plans. And so that's about as far as I'll go with that. City staff is here tonight. They can really address some of those additional questions that you have with that. But then really looking at this, you might say, well, with a conditional use permit, we typically do add conditions to kind of remedy potential mitigation of impacts. We just really didn't feel as staff that those things would be, that there could be concerns with cost with some of those types of different things. And then in discussing with the applicant, and I would say to begin and end with, is that staff has had some really good conversations with the applicant, which is always good. And our understanding is that he really views this as kind of a short-term operation. He didn't view it as a long-term operation. And then he would also be leasing this property, and which is really good, which doesn't always happen, is he hasn't, in my understanding, he hasn't leased the property as of yet. So he knew that we had to go through this process, and so he's had some good discussions and is fully aware of these things. But with that, some of these items as far as mitigation, there would be some costs associated with it to make sure we remedy some of those things. So staff had concerns about really if that was achievable. And then, again, I'd say, the city staff memo really, there isn't probably a way to overcome some of those concerns from the city perspective as far as future land use and conflicts associated with it. So staff, again, is recommending denial of this particular application. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you and answer any questions that you might have for staff at this time. Otherwise, the applicant is in attendance this evening as well.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Appreciate that. All right, county or city, any questions for staff?
I just have one question. Were the surrounding property owners, were they notified, or was it just posted that the conditional use, was it just posted on the property like a sign, or were the adjacent property owners notified?
Yeah, great question. So under the joint regulations, we only post the property. There is no direct notification sent to the property owners.
And there was no negative feedback, comments from any of did you receive any correspondence?
No, as of this meeting, staff received no communication from surrounding properties. Yep.
All right, Commission, any additional questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, with that, I'll ask the applicant to come forward and talk about their application.
Good evening. My name is Lance Bosch. I I reside currently at 2405 South Beach Avenue, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 57106. Tonight I come in front of you to talk about this request for this conditional use permit. First, I'd like to thank Toby Brown and the rest of the staff in the office for working with me and answering my phone calls that I did make to them because I wanted to do this in the right format. So with that being said, I did some dialing back on my original narrative, did a little more thought process on things. At max, originally I had said at max 20 dogs. I thought about it a little more and I'd like to dial that back to 15 dogs because there is concern about the noise that dogs do produce. So I thought that would help with the mitigation of noise. That is a concern. And I do realize that is a concern because I did used to work at another boarding facility, but that boarding facility doesn't operate anymore because the owner has retired and just does not care to carry on the operation. And his building site is going to go to his children. So I had no way to continue carrying on that boarding service there. The objective is to use this property as a startup location and then move on in 5 to 10 years once the business is growing. This is not intended to be a commercial business nor a retail business. It is intended to be a small business that my wife, who isn't present, that my wife and I can own and operate. This passion to provide boarding services originates from previous employment, as I discussed, at other dog boarding facilities that don't operate anymore due to ownership retirement. The hours of operation we've labeled as 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week. And these would be by appointment only for pickup and drop-off. Appointments for pickup and drop-off will only be allowed during light traffic hours. There's going to be some exercise times for dogs that start at 7 a.m. because they're going to have to get out, they're going to have to go to the bathroom, and that'll be done in those exercise pens that I do believe are on, it's the two blue lines on the north side of the building site there. So the exercise times are going to start at 7 o'clock and then they'll take place throughout the day until 9 p.m. The number of employees I labeled 1 to 4. It would be primarily myself and my wife and a possibility of maybe 1 to 2 part-time employees that could possibly work there on the weekend. That would be at our discretion. My wife is a nurse, so she works a lot on the weekends, so us going out of town, it doesn't happen too often. But there again, those employees would be family members of ours. They wouldn't be just somebody that we hired. We wouldn't put an ad out for it. We come from a large family, and our family supports what we do, and they are willing to help us if we need to go somewhere so that the business can carry on while we're absent. Inside the building, it's going to need to be retrofitted with proper insulation to mitigate the noise. There's going to be a bathroom, just a small bathroom and a small entrance office area where people can come in, say, hey, how you doing? I'm here to drop my pet off because I got an appointment and everything like that. So there's also going to be inside the building, there's going to be individual rooms that will have walls, ceilings, doors that are going to house 5 animals in those rooms. The reason I do that is to keep the animals calm so that they're not, say, 10 in a row on one side of the room and 10 in a row on the other side of the room. That, by putting these 5 animals in one room, that's going to bring the stress level down for the animal. And between each animal, there's going to be a solid divider So then that way, they don't nose each other through the fence and get each other stressed out and worked up and want to play and everything like that. The stalls would be 5 by 5 and 6 foot tall. And each stall is going to consist of an orthopedic type dog bed, and there'll also be climate control in each room as well. On the north side of the building, I talked about the 2 exercise pens. There's a lean-to that is approximately 10 foot wide by 60 foot long. And that would be divided into 2 separate exercise pens. We would come off the lean-to with a 10-foot long fence, and then we would go back 60 foot to the other end, come back in 10 foot. That fence is going to be made so that dogs cannot see out of it, and nobody can see in through that fence either. There's also another thing that will bring noise down, because when dogs can see things that trigger them on the outside, that can cause them to bark. We're also going to install an underground holding tank that's going to collect the animal waste. That underground holding tank is going to be pumped and disposed of by a septic company or waste company on an as-needed basis. On the south side of the property, there's a neighbor that owns that driveway, as you can see on the lower part of that picture. There's an easement between the 2 property owners that they share joint custody of that driveway. I do have a copy of that easement with me. I have spoke to that neighbor about that driveway. I visited with Kevin, who's the owner of that driveway, and he said, yes, there is an easement between me and Casey Prostralo, who's the owner of the property I'm looking at leasing, and he is also present this evening. Kevin expressed to me that there's a lot of farm equipment that moves up and down that driveway, because there's a farm field to the west of the property there. And the snow removal is shared between the 2 property owners. And I expressed to Kevin that if I was to be able to do my small business here, that I would like to take over the snow removal. So then that way, customers can come and go, and they don't have to worry, the 2 property owners don't have to worry about the snow removal. In conversation with Kevin, he said, I think you have a great plan going on here. And he said, I will just tell you that the person that lives on that property with those storage units on it, he said he does have 3 dogs. And the resident to the north of this property also has a dog there too. And that's really all I have. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Yeah, thank you, Lance.
Yes.
This time we'll ask the commissioners if they have any questions for the applicant. County or Z?
As I understand it, you don't live on the property, correct?
That is correct.
So do you plan to have like a camera system or something available so you can see what's going on at night?
Absolutely. The reason we don't live there yet is because we haven't felt the need to move there until there's a possibility of approval for the conditional use permit. So if approval is made, we will be moving to the house that is on the property. And yes, there will be security cameras.
Okay.
All right, commissioners, other questions?
So part of the consideration for you here is being able to lease the home as a residence for you, and then also having this facility to be able to operate the kennel and, okay.
That is correct, yes.
Because I was wondering if, why this location? Because that's the challenge that we've got in front of us right now in needing the conditional use permit is this location and this use. So I just was curious if you'd looked at other locations or what was driving you to want this location so that it makes sense with the primary,
Sure.
with that being your residence.
Sure. Actually, I currently lease property from Casey himself. And I presented my idea to Casey, and we were talking it over, and he said, I've got this property over on South Cliff Avenue. It's got a building for what you need, and it's got a house for you and your wife to live in. So that's how this property came to visual.
All right, commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, Lance, I appreciate that.
Thanks for your time.
All right, at this time, I'll ask anybody in favor of the application, please come forward and speak. I was going to hold off because I saw you get in the eyes, so.
Casey Prostrollo, do I have to give you my home address? Is that how
Yes,
this works?
please.
Okay, 3104 West Auburn Hills Court, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 57108.
Thank you, Casey.
I'm glad he said he was going to live there because I think that is an added benefit to this kind of a use for this property. I am a licensed real estate agent, so I always watch where these properties are and what the use is. So I understand some of the challenges that you may have with granting a conditional use on this. However, I do feel that this property is perfect for it. It mimics a little bit of the Paws Pet Resort, which is just a mile and a half north of there and surrounded by multifamily property around it. And I'm sure that's zoned properly, and if commercial zoning is something that we'd have to consider on this to get this accomplished, it's something we could potentially look at. That being said, I know Shape Sioux Falls is a long ways out for this property and has maybe some other ideas of what it's going to be used for, but that's where the temporary aspect of Lance getting his business started with this property is advantageous for him, and it's advantageous for me because he's been a long-term tenant and I know he takes care of his properties. So I've lived in this home for 6 months, and I can tell you that I would be more concerned about the road noise from Cliff Avenue than anything else out there. The neighbors have 3 dogs that run wherever they want to run. They're very nice dogs, and they've always been quiet. Never met the neighbor across the street, very seldom saw them. And the neighbor to the north is a rental, and I believe that property is owned by another real estate agent. So I think there's a lot of prospect in what this land might be used for eventually. And so when Lance and I met, it was discussed as far as the timeline for how long we'd want this to go, and we pretty much agreed that we were in a 5 to 10 year plan. And I bring that up because most of the planning and zoning stuff with the city of Sioux Falls is in that 6 to 12, 8 to 14 year time frame from what I've done research on. So Lance is a great person, works hard, maintains his property, never bothers me for anything little, which is a nice thing as a landlord, and I do think he'd be a great asset for both the county and the city. So that's what I've got.
Thank you, Casey. All right, I'll ask anybody else in favor of the applicant to come forward. All right, seeing none, I'll ask anybody in opposition of the application come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input. And from there, I'll ask, before we ask for a motion from either commission, let's have our joint conversation. Any comments, any thoughts? Make sure we're all on the same page. Commissioner Boozy, looking
yeah.
for something to say?
Yeah, kind of, from listening to it, it sounds like it's a great idea and it's well thought out. And I know we're talking about as being a startup and moving down the road, you know, in the 5 to 10 years, well, you look at Sioux Falls's plan, that's 6 to 12. I'm just afraid that you're kind of stuck in there that if you approve it, what do you do down the road if Sioux Falls gets there faster? Or if Harrisburg would happen to get up that way. So as of right now, I'm leaning towards denial.
All right, other commissioners?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I'm struggling with this one because it has nothing to do with you guys as an applicant, the property. It makes sense to me, everything that you've talked about doing out here. I do respect where staff is coming from with their recommendation. I'm inclined to support staff here and vote to deny this one. But, and one of the reasons I would really struggle with being able to support it is as it's presented right now, there are no extra stipulations with it. So if we were to approve this conditional use permit, we don't have any of the extra stipulations that staff would typically recommend. So at this point in time, it would just be a conditional use permit in perpetuity. So as presented, I'm not able to support this. But I do want you guys to know, I mean, the plan makes a lot of sense to me, but I'm going to support staff's recommendation and cannot support this, how it's presented.
And I would, Commissioner, or Mr. Brown, answer me if I'm wrong, but I think we could put any recommendations on there. If we say yes, we could put any stipulations on there as far as conditions. Yeah. All right, other commissioners, any other comment?
Mr. Chair, could I ask city staff maybe to come up to the podium and kind of
Please, yeah.
brief us a little bit on their recommendations and so we can get a better understanding.
Good evening, Kristen Bennett, Sioux Falls Planning Office. Good evening, Commissioners. So Sioux Falls City staff recommendation comes from the specific location of this. As many of you know, most of you know, we have a future land use plan map and a tiered system that goes out into our growth areas. This area is currently identified as a Tier 2, which is within our idea of being a 6 to 15 years that we would be there. After conversing with engineering staff, we do have plans. It does sound like it would be closer to, you know, the 6 to 10 versus the extended period of that, realizing that this can change kind of at any time. So that kind of covers the tiers. In terms of land use, we have a kind of nodal system that we look at for where we look at it being appropriate for more intensive uses such as commercial, industrial, that type of thing. This would not fall within any of our identified nodes. Those tend to be at the intersections of two arterials, major arterials, stuff like that. So that would actually be further down at Cliff and 106, or to the north at the other lighted intersection that's north of this. So this does kind of fall into that interim place in terms of, you know, future access, future use. We have concerns as to what would be developed out to the west. Our current plans would see that as some form of residential. You know, this close to Cliff, it might be townhomes, twin homes, but it could potentially be single family, even this close to a major arterial. So for those reasons, as well as considerations of the existing neighbors and noise mitigation, we actually do require, within the city, if a kennel comes forward within 1,000 feet of a residential form, we do have a conditional use permit for that. Excuse me. So with 4 houses that are not related to this being within that 1,000 feet existing, we also have concerns there. Did that cover everything?
Thank you.
Anybody else questions for staff?
I have a question for Toby, if I could. Thank you. Can you help me understand with conditional use permits, if we have, how are those enforced? If we were to add regulations or stipulations, we would add conditions to it, how do you guys enforce those?
So, yeah, great question. So the county's complaint-based. So we would periodically, we try to do annual reviews of some of them, but more than likely be complaint-based. So if we didn't receive any complaints, then we wouldn't have any notification of it.
So the idea of trying to put a time limit on this conditional use permit's not really practical. If we said this conditional use permit is valid for 5 years, and then it just sunsets. But there's really no enforcement mechanism of that or tracking of it. I mean, that's not really a practical idea.
Correct. I mean, the one condition that we'd probably recommend is it would just be just to this applicant, restricted to just this applicant.
Sure.
But again, and I'll clarify, is that the concerns with traffic is Cliff Avenue is a very busy road right now. We would typically, if we were going to recommend a condition, it would have been that they would do a traffic impact study. So we make sure that we don't need turn lanes or some of those things potentially there. That's just a huge cost for what you're envisioning here. And the noise mitigation is that the applicant did discuss insulation mainly for the benefit of the animals, but we would be concerned with acoustical type insulation. It's pretty expensive. It's more of a long-term option. So we just, again, it was really, and we don't typically do this, but we really just thought about it as a cost. Is this cost prohibitive for a short-term type venture for what he's proposing? So, but again, that's our concerns, but, but thank you.
Thank you.
All right, commissioners, any other additional comments or discussion?
Well, I just want to say that I love this plan. It's really well thought out. It seems like it works really well for you guys. I think there's some pretty big obstacles that I think are just a challenge to overcome. And one would be your cost and your investment for a temporary, for a temporary facility. My wish for you guys is that you would find something that is just a little bit more suitable. That just in case a 5 to 10 year plan would be a long-term or, lifetime opportunity for you guys. Because I love this plan. I mean, I hate for this property to sit vacant and not be utilized for something like this. But I also just think it's not a great fit. So I'm going to be not voting in favor of this.
All right, commissioners, additional comments? All right, I'll end it up by saying the exact same thing. I am a big supporter of small business, startup businesses. I've done it myself. I honestly just looking and talking to you guys, I know your heart's in the exact right spot. And animals, I know my wife's listening, so dogs, sorry. But yeah, I'm going to recommend a 902 of City of Sioux Falls. We just need to grow the right way. And I think this might hurt some growth, or it might hurt you guys also. So I'm going to vote denial also. All right, with that, I'll ask the county for some recommendation, or can't think of my name, the word. Motion. Let's go with that. Motion, county.
It's always in the affirmative, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to approve.
All right.
Second, Boots.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion on the county side? Hear none, I'll do roll call. Commissioner Boots,
No.
Commissioner Sweeter,
No.
Commissioner Instead.
Hello?
Yep. We hear you, Commissioner.
Yeah, no.
And Commissioner Jungling's a no. Fails on the county side. City, Sioux Falls?
On the city side, I'll look for commissioner action.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion on the city side? Seeing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Malawi?
No.
Or are we voting affirmative?
We're voting in the affirmative.
No, yep, so vote no.
Yeah, no.
Fisher?
No.
Gray?
No.
And Norman said no as well. Failed on the city side.
All right, thank you, Commission. All right, with that, we will move on to old business. Is there any old business to discuss, Mr. Brown? None. New business, we have presentation from City of Sioux Falls.
Good evening, Fletcher Laycock, Senior Planner with City of Sioux Falls Planning Department. Let me see if I can get to a presentation. I'm here to give you a presentation on an update to our comprehensive plan, the Shape Sioux Falls 2050 comprehensive plan. Our region has been through, or is going through a lot of comprehensive planning right now. Lincoln County's adopted theirs, Minnehaha County's working on theirs, City of City of Harrisburg's even doing an update. So we're in the process of doing our own major update. And what I want to talk through is the scope of the project. We just finished our phase 2, which is the public engagement process. Go through some of the overall takeaways and themes that we heard, and then review our next steps. On the right-hand side of the page, this is one of the things that we did when we kicked off our comprehensive plan public input engagement, was we had a coloring contest, and this picture, which is from the cover of our summary report, is one of the winners of that contest. They got a prize, I believe a hat from the mayor and a card. So it was really this, we're planning for the future out to 2050, we're planning for our children, so we wanted to get children engaged in the process. So with that, we kicked off in May of 2024. We formed an advisory committee and put together the scope of what our consultant Confluence is doing for us. And we plan on being completed by the fourth quarter of 2025. And we just finished phase 2, which is our public engagement process. And I'll be going through really in depth what we learned and the activities we went through in that engagement process. If there are any questions through this, just shout them out and I'll take them as they come up. So phase 2, we went really heavy. What we really wanted was engagement with the community to hear what was important to the people, what trends are happening out there. So city staff hosted 18 pop-up events through the summer where we went to different events, and I'll identify those. We had an online engagement website with where we had over 1,700 unique visitors. We had a survey online, as well as 4 different activities to get people's input. We had community listening sessions at 2 different libraries. We then had public visioning and neighborhood workshops in October. We've had 13 focus group meetings where we identified different areas and groups of people to meet with, as well as stakeholder interviews. And then our big thing that we did was a community survey, which was a statistically valid survey. So those results represent what the people of the community of Sioux Falls, what they think is important. So going through those pop-up events, booths that we had, staffed by city staff, kicked off with National Night Out, which we went to different neighborhood groups and handed out those coloring sheets and started the engagement process. We were at Riverfest, Levitt concerts, a couple of those throughout the summer and fall, and culminated with the Touch a Truck, which was at Harmondon Park, and got really a lot of people that wouldn't usually be at a comprehensive plan meeting. You know, we went to places where people were going to be congregating. That was kind of our method of how we were going to get as much public engagement as possible. On the interactive city website, or we have a city website, but then our consultant hosted a website. We had Social Pinpoint. There were over 1,700 visitors, and then 500 contributions made on Social Pinpoint. Over 500, and what that was is these are areas that we want to fix, these are ideas that we have, and these are things that we love about our community. So we're incorporating all of this public engagement into a final document, but you know, one of the things we learned at our community listening sessions, which we held at public libraries, was that conservation and resiliency, housing and transportation were really trends that people are important to people. And we already knew that, but it's nice to be able to have numbers to support that. We then had public visioning and neighborhood workshops at different middle schools and libraries. And that was really to do SWOT analysis, or strength, weakness, opportunities, and, now I forget the third one, threats. And so those were some good opportunities for people to get involved. And then the big thing we had was the ETC, statistically valid survey. And I pulled out some of the results of that, which is that what people want to see in the business sector is more biotechnology and scientific research, technology-related businesses, and healthcare and medical. And in the city, we already have those areas identified, so it's good to know that we don't have to invent something new, that we already have it, we just maybe have to get the word out that it exists. For land uses, the big thing over the last few years has been daycare, senior housing, and grocery stores. So again, these are things that we have been working on, we'll continue to work on. And then when it comes to the growth of the city, people want us to focus on maintenance and repair of roads, accessible housing, so that's housing that different costs, so just basically housing for everyone across the board. And then, again, investing in conservation and resiliency. What is good news for us is that 70% believe that our zoning regulations are adequate. And actually, 22% believe they're not strict enough. So that was an interesting result that we got from that. I think a lot, we've definitely had a lot of stakeholder and focus group meetings where we're trying to get input from different sectors of, let's go through. Focus, different areas, so arts and culture, healthcare, water districts, education, housing, economic development. And then one of the big ones we had was local government and planning, so setting up meetings with the City of T, our Planning Commission, Southeast Council of Governments, the City of Brandon, Hartford, Lincoln County, and then what we're hoping is that soon with the City of Harrisburg, once their city administrator is in place, we can set up some meetings with them to go over how we plan together. So some of the key takeaways from our engagement and our survey results and everything that we've been doing: accessible housing. So that's not just affordable housing, but it's all types of housing. Housing in neighborhoods. And our real focus moving forward with the city of Sioux Falls is how do we not just maintain, but invest in our different neighborhoods. And then looking even at neighborhood commercial, those small scale uses that support the places that we live. Transportation and mobility, we've already had a big investment in our public transit system and on-demand, but people want to see more of that. Even if they're not using it, they understand that there are parts of our population that do need it. Pedestrian safety, bicyclist safety, and traffic calming. Conservation and resiliency is really just, this is where preservation of agricultural land, the prime agricultural land that we have surrounding us, and focusing on maintaining that through infill development and more dense development in the city of Sioux Falls so we can preserve some of that agricultural land on the edges. And then planning for floods and other natural disasters and emergencies, so continuing to do that. Economic and cultural development, we see a lot, the mix of housing and office and retail, supporting local businesses and investing in our arts and culture. And then community health and services. So one of the big things that's been happening recently is the homelessness issue with the city. And though this is a land use plan, it's still nice to be able to say, okay, how can we help address this issue? Are there any ways from a land use perspective that we could do that? And then one of the things we heard is community centers. People want, we've kind of gone away from community centers, but people like having areas that they can congregate and not just go shopping, but have these areas in the community for different activities. And then infrastructure and public health. So, I think what we see is we're not just doing land use, but we're finding information that our public works department and our parks departments can use that can really help them as they're going through their planning processes in the future. So those were some of the themes and priorities that we've heard. What we're doing in our next phase is actually writing our document. And so that's going to be our next 10 months. Hopefully we'll have a draft by October, and we'll be bringing that draft to this joint planning commission and the joint elected officials for adoption. But right now we've coalesced all that information gathering and public input, and that'll all be available on our city website, hopefully by the end of the week. If anyone has any more questions about, say, the results of the ETC survey, we will have a link to the city council informational meeting on the website. So are there any questions?
Fletcher, I just appreciate how much effort you guys are putting in the community. I mean, all those events and all that public input, I mean, that really is key for our growth as a county and as a city. And getting the public's input, that's great. I mean, that takes a lot of effort to coordinate those and getting people out there and just getting those results together. So that's great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Fletcher. All right, with that, any other new business? All right, with that, I think we're ready for adjournment. Lincoln County,
Motion to
All those in
adjourn,
favor?
Boots.
Second, Sweeter?
all those in favor say aye.
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 Against? City?
City's had looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Adjourned on the city side.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.